Hello everybody, thank you for coming and checking out my very first YouTube video. Today I will be doing a video on alcohol ink art and part of my process for getting some of my landscapes. So I've been asked several times when I do art shows, how do you get those backgrounds? That's really neat. Is that watercolor? No, it's not watercolor. These inks are based in alcohol, which is why they're called alcohol ink. They dry very fast, so you have to move them very fast. They do reactivate with alcohol, so if you make a mistake, it's easy to fix until you've sealed your work. They can be sealed many different ways. Some people use a UV sealant, some people seal them with resin. I personally have done both, but today we're just going to do a basic, simple landscape background, just to get you started if you were curious. So it is highly recommended that you wear gloves when you work with this ink. So I'm going to recommend that. However, I don't do it. I don't like gloves. I don't like not being able to feel my work. And I have discovered that if I get the ink on my hands, I can get it back off very easily with Dawn dish soap and baking soda. So if you mix that together and wash your hands with it, the ink will come right off. And if that doesn't work, then usually it wears off within a day or two. So I'm not overly worried about my hands being stained with ink. However, I do recommend that you take any jewelry off. I have gotten this ink on my wedding rings, and it did take the jeweler about an hour to clean the ring. So to start off with, I primarily paint on Yupo paper. Yupo is a plastic paper. It's very smooth. Right here I have the 74-pound, and you can see that, it's very smooth, very thin, easy to manipulate. And the reason that we paint on a non-porous surface with the alcohol ink is because in order to get that flowy look, you really want something that will repel the liquid of the ink. You can paint on canvas, but you will get a different look. You'll get a textured look, and I'll go over that in a different video if anybody is interested in seeing ink on canvas. The two inks that I use the most is Tim Holtz brand Adirondack. It's my favorite. I also use the Jacquard Pinata inks. They come in little bottles with white tops. There. Now the Pinatas are a little bit thicker than the Adirondack ink. So once I start to use them, you can see the difference. But you can use them together, and they do have very complementary colors. It's just all in the way that you use it. So to get the ink to flow, my favorite thing to use is the alcohol blending solution, also from Tim Holtz. Now you can buy this at Michael's, at Hobby Lobby, or you can buy it directly from them online. And I will try to get together some links of where you can get various different supplies. If I'm not using the alcohol blending solution, you can also use rubbing alcohol, but you're going to want to make sure that it's the 91% isopropyl rubbing alcohol. Anything under the 91% just doesn't flow. Looks terrible, has a little bit of a grainy feel to it, and you really want your work to flow. So when I'm just doing basic landscape backgrounds, I don't really plan it out. So I might think, I'll do a sunset. So I'll get oranges and yellows together, and the more blending solution or the more alcohol that you pour on your paper, the lighter that your ink will be. So you're basically diluting the pigments. If you want it darker, you use less. If you want it lighter, you use more. I prefer that my pictures be very flowy, so I tend to use a lot of ink, or blending solution, and I drop more ink if I want more color. So today I think we will go with, let's go ahead and do a sunset background. Why not? Let's do that. Okay, so I've already taken the caps off of my bottles, and I know what the various colors are, and I can also list those for you. But I don't really plan a whole lot out. I like my art to be organic. I like it, you know, sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it turns out great, sometimes it turns out horrible. To protect my work surface, I have an old piece of Yupo that I have cut down, and I use it sort of as an art mat so that it doesn't get on my table. However, I have a glass work table, and it's very easy to clean. You just use some Windex, mop it up if you get the ink on there. All right, so let's begin. To start off, since I've decided I want to do a sunset, I like pinks in my sunset. And this is a Wild Plum color from Adirondack, one of my favorites. I'm also going to use Sunset Orange, and from Pinata, I will use Calabaza Orange. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. I use various different greens. This is a lettuce color. Sorry, I'm not really sure what the camera's doing, so hopefully you can see that. Now on some of these I've had to write the names out, and I'll explain that later. And then this is a citrus green color, also from Adirondack. All right, to get started, we will drop our blending solution. And I spray a very liberal amount. And then I'm going to take my Sunshine Yellow, spray it right along there, and my Wild Plum, drop some in there, and then the orange from Pinata. And what I want is for these inks to blend themselves together without a whole lot of interference from me, but I do go in and I put more solution in so that they can flow a little bit better. And while I'm doing this, you can see that I'm just moving my paper from side to side. They really are blending nicely together, but there are some areas that don't have the color. This is because the blending solution will find, I don't know what you call channels, or will find a way to move along the paper, and then it kind of just does its own thing there. So now we'll add some more solution. It's a little bright, so I'm going to put some more yellow. The orange is taken over quite a bit, and as you can see, it really is just dripping there onto my paper, or my mat, I'm sorry. The good thing about Yupo is you don't ever really want to throw Yupo paper away. You can use it for a mat. If you mess something up on it, you can always wipe it off, start over, make a new painting, make a new picture. So I'm trying not to block out the screen there too much, but I do want it to run to the other side of the paper. Another thing that I will do if I'm being impatient or I want a different look is sometimes I'll use canned air to go ahead and help the drying process. But you can tell that this will dry very quickly. Not only that, but I live in Arizona, so it's extremely hot out here. And when it is in the middle of the summer and it's 120 degrees outside, you really just have minutes to paint. You don't have a very long time. I don't worry so much when we get these little tiny white dots, because I do have alcohol ink markers and pens, and I'll go over that later, but I'll just fill in that little hole with dot of ink from the marker or the pen, and then that way, if I have a good thing going on here with the way my patterns are going, then I don't have to risk messing that up with a whole nother big drop of ink that looks out of place. Now once I get my sky where I like it, and I will be trying to put a sun in here. Now this could go either way. It could turn out really great, or it could turn out not so great. And I decided to live on the edge today and not use masking fluid. So honestly, the sun could be a really awkward looking cloud, or it could be a great sun. We'll see. And once I have the sky the way that I want it, I will go in and I will do some greens for the ground. really like the way that this is turning out. That's very pretty. It will dry very quick. I don't have any doubt that it will be good here very soon. And if you can see that, we've got some really pretty patterns there in the clouds and different colors to break it up. I don't normally paint with just one color because then everything looks flat and it looks, you know, as much as alcohol ink is abstract, you don't really want your painting to look flat, then there's no interest and people just won't stop and look. Alright. Okay, I think that's about dry. So I'm probably going to avoid laying this straight down onto my mat until this actually dries. I don't want a lot on the back. As you can see, there's going to be some, you know, runoff onto the back. That's okay. Nobody will see that once it's framed. All right. So to get my ground colors, I like to use the citrus color and the lettuce color. These are both from Tim Holtz. And sometimes I will use a brown. There's various different ones. There's caramel, there's butterscotch. I really like the butterscotch because it flows really nicely with the sunset colors. So I will just go ahead and open that one. All right. And because I, once again, don't plan out things very well, what I'm going to do is start with my blending solution. Get it all across the paper. And I'm just going to start doing inks here. And some butterscotch. Butterscotch looks like I might have had it dry out a little bit there. Okay. Now, this is why you should wear gloves. However, it doesn't bother me. So I don't. Now, my butterscotch seems like it did not really do, looks like there might be something wrong with it. It's okay, some of these inks are really old. They don't act like that when you first get them out of the bottle. But let's pour some lettuce in here and see what happens with that. And I dropped some of the extra ink onto my matte paper. Now to get some of these little out, here's my canned air. Okay. And again, the great thing about the ink is that if you don't like it, which I really don't like the ground, then you can always go back in, keep layering it, keep going until you have something that you really like. So I'm actually going to put some more orange in it. There we go. Some more orange. Yes. Let's do some more green. Have quite a bit of runoff there. It's okay. It's great. Now we're starting to get a texture in the ground that I really like when I'm putting trees into my background. And I'll do a video on trees later. But the pattern that we're getting right now makes for a really great root system, so perfect for trees. Okay, and you just let that. Now if you don't like what's going on there at the bottom, you can see that it's starting to do some wild and wacky things there. You can either take your canned air and go over it again, that off there. It's fine. Or you can take like a little felt cloth and go along the edge there and it'll soak that right up. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up my mat and put another mat underneath it because I would like to lay this flat. And once we lay it flat, we're going to go ahead and try to do the sun. But I do want it very flat because I only want a circle for the sun. I don't want any drops or runs off from that. So I will be right back once the mat is cleaned up. Alright, so we're back. I have cleaned up my workspace just a little bit so that I can lay my paper flat. The reason I need the paper to be completely flat this time is because we're going to go ahead and do the sun, and hopefully it'll go right in this area. This is where I'm shooting for. If it doesn't, that's okay. Like I said, we can fix it. It's just, I like to get it right on the first try. That way I don't have to mess with it very much. So, another thing that I mentioned was these little white spots here. So you can see here where the ink did not quite fill up the paper. Now some of this is okay. It depends on what size you're going for in your painting. If you are a person who likes to paint big and then crop down to frame various different size frames, then these won't matter. Don't do anything with them. You can always cut that out later. If you want to frame the size that you actually painted and you don't want to risk messing up what you have there, there are various different brands of alcohol-based markers. You really want to make sure that your markers are based with alcohol ink. There are different brands. Some of the most popular brands are the Copic markers, which are my absolute favorite but very expensive. If you pay full price for these markers, you're paying about $8 a piece. I never pay full price for anything. I always use coupons and sales and buy off of eBay and Amazon or anywhere that I really can to get a great deal. Another very popular brand is the Prismacolor Premier markers. They are alcohol ink based. And then you have your things like Pro markers, Chameleon pens, which are very new to the market and actually really fun to use. And then you have your store brands like Jerry's Artorama has concept markers. You can get your Spectrum Noir markers. There's just tons of different brands of alcohol-based markers, and it's really up to you to decide what you want to paint, what you like, the colors that you need, that sort of thing. For me, a lot of it is what fits in my hand the best. I really like the way the Copic marker fits, and I like the brush tip. So the brush tip helps me feel more like, you know, I'm painting with a marker rather than just illustrating. So for me, I like to cover up these little dots. I don't, even if I am going to be cropping later, I can crop this out, but and sometimes it doesn't look quite natural. Most of the time people don't notice. On these little bitty ones, really, people won't really notice it. Now, if it bothers you, you can always drop ink on top of there, and that's okay, but you can see that that blends in quite a bit. Now, this one is fairly large, and I may drop ink on that one after I do the marker, just to make sure that it gets filled up. Or I might just put blending solution on it, see what happens. Like I said, the Copics are my favorite. It really is just up to you to decide what your favorite marker is going to be. And you can hear me rattling around here in my various different markers. You can tell that I use this for alcohol ink art all the time because I have ink all over everything. It's just the way my studio is. At one time I thought it would be great to have white furniture. Now I don't have white furniture anymore. Alright. I do think that I probably will crop out this side of the painting. That's just a lot of space and area that I'm not really caring for very much. And because I think that I will crop that out, may move my sun over just a little bit when we go to do that. Okay, so there's really different ways to do this. One of the easiest ways is to use masking fluid. Do your sun, very first thing, underneath the masking fluid, lay the masking fluid, let that dry, and then do your background over top of the masking fluid. And then once your background's dry, you just peel the masking fluid off, and there you have a perfect little circle. However, I really like a little bit of color to be in that. When you do a sun that way, you're getting the white of the paper underneath, and I like mine to be a blend of the colors in the background. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take a little bit of my sunshine yellow, and I'm going to put it in my plastic palette. I'm going to take my alcohol ink blending solution, and this will dry very fast, so I have to work fast. And then, so I have specific brushes that I use. I don't use expensive brushes for my alcohol ink because most often I throw them away after a few uses. The ink and the alcohol are very hard on the brushes, on the bristles. It will eventually break down your brushes, and you will want to use them for projects where precision is not needed. So you don't want to spend $40 or $50 on a brush that you're going to use for alcohol ink. You will go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby, Walmart, anywhere that sells packs of cheap brushes, and that's actually what you want to use for this art form. All right, so I'm going to take my brush and first just dip it in the solution. All right. I'm going to see if I can get this to zoom in just a little bit because it is a very cool process and you'll want to be able to see it. Let's see if the camera will focus there. Let's pull it back out just a little bit. Right there. All right, let's see. So I pick the spot that I want my sun in, and very carefully I put one little dab right there. And you can see that you have this tiny little circle that's making its way a little bit bigger across the paper. And so what I do is I go in stages and I let this one happen. You can see that it's very small. I would like it to be a little bit bigger. So I go ahead and dip my pen back into the blending solution. And I do it again, but right in the center of the original dot. And I try to put just a little more solution in there. Now I've seen people drop big drops of blending solution on theirs before, and sometimes it works and sometimes it gets out of hand. I prefer to go slow because I don't want it to get out of hand. Now, you'll see that the more ink that I get on there, it's not going to be the more blending solution that I get there, it's not going to be a perfectly round circle anymore. And that's okay. The purpose of the ink is to be a little bit organic. You want an abstract look with it. It's very easy to do abstracts with the ink. And I will just keep continuing this process, going very slowly until I get the size of the sun that I actually want. And I think it's getting to be about the size, maybe a little bit bigger. Now there's never a right and a wrong way to do things in art. You experiment and you do what you want to do. See what happens. Sometimes, like Bob Ross says, you get happy little accidents. You don't make mistakes. Sometimes you want to scream and throw away the work that you worked on for hours because you dropped a little bit of ink somewhere that you didn't want to drop it and there's no way to fix it. But it's fun. It's a good way to relax after a hard day at work. And one thing I want to mention is that with the alcohol ink, you do have fumes. It does smell like alcohol. It smells quite a bit like a doctor's office when you're going to get a shot, or if you are sensitive to smells, you want to have windows open, you want to have fans running. If you are expecting, you want to make sure that you talk to your doctor before you decide to paint with this medium. One of the reasons I like to use the alcohol blending solution a little bit more than the actual alcohol is because I feel that it has a lower odor to it. It doesn't bother me quite as bit as the alcohol. Now the alcohol is cheaper, so I do use both. And I want my sun just a little bit bigger. So I'm going around the edges very gently with my brush, and you can see that I'm starting to spread some of the ink in there, and that's okay. I want it to fade, be brighter in the middle, fade out a little bit. Nothing's ever really a perfect circle. It's okay. And there is going to be my very basic, very abstract background. When I get done doing my paintings with the ink, I always sign my work. I advise everybody to sign their work. And now you can use the Micron pens, or you can use Faber-Castell Pitt pens. Oh, here we go. Here is the Faber-Castell Pitt pen. Both of these are waterproof, and they work very well for doing details on top of the alcohol ink. They are my favorite pens. I would recommend these to anybody. So, I'll go ahead and sign my work. I'm going to sign mine here on the bottom because I am planning on cropping that out. There we go. And then I will put a picture up at the end of the completed work in a matte, so you can see how pretty it actually looks when it's in a matte. So this is the basic landscape background for alcohol ink painting. And if I have people that want it, I will go ahead and get into more detail about how to do foregrounds, trees, birds, hummingbirds, butterflies, landscapes, all sorts of things you can do. This is just to give you an idea of how the inks flow and what the basic supplies are, and I hope you enjoyed it. And this is my very first YouTube video, so I'm sure they will get better, and thank you all for visiting and hanging out with me for just a little bit. If you like my channel, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will put more videos up as we go along. Also, it won't just always be on ink. I do use various different types of supplies. I do colored pencil work, I do marker work, we do acrylics, just all sorts of things. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, go ahead and hit subscribe. Thank you.